Hi, I'm Mark Switwood from Mahoning Matters, I'm the local editor, and today is our first of what we think will be many on-camera discussions we're planning, where we take participants in an important issue of the day and we talk about them. And the idea is not to have a debate where we score points, but really to have a discussion, try to maybe find some understanding, maybe cover some new ground. This will be accompanied on MahoningMatters.com, our website, and an article that we're putting together based on the conversation today. The Mahoning Valley Children's Task Force issued a statement a couple months ago discussing the proposed dormitory. When lifestyle stability factors intervene and prevent educational access to these most poverty-oppressed and most at-risk children in the nation, we must offer the solution of a dormitory option. They do not have a future, otherwise education is their only escape route. The dormitory builds upon the model established by the Mahoning County High School, which has graduated more than 300 students who've been expelled from other schools since opening in 2008, according to a release from the courts. But the proposal not only comes with a hefty price tag, $12 million, but also some frustration among many about a perceived lack of community input. So today, we're joined, Jess Harden, Justin Dennis, are joined by Mahoning County Juvenile Court Judge Teresa Delick, Youngstown City School District Board Member and Treasurer Corinne Sanderson, Philip Warren, the Bryn Mawr Block Watch Group leader, and Ken Donaldson, pastor of the Rising Star Baptist Church. And the idea today, we have a couple other folks in the room, the idea today is to have a discussion about these issues, and we're going to begin with the panelists giving us kind of a short discussion about, about the task force, about the needs, and about the dormitory possibility. And we turn it over to Ken Donaldson.
Well, basically, this was, we started talking about this in my relationship with Judge Delick. I really didn't have a relationship with Judge Delick before I started inquiring about how to help kids in our community. I've been back in Youngstown. I'm born and raised Youngstown, Ohio. I went to college and stayed away 20 years. I've been back. Next month it'll be 12 years. Since I came back, I've been involved with East High School and Valley Christian School. I taught over at Valley Christian School and coached, and I am now a coach over at East High School. Even while I was teaching at Valley Christian School, I was going twice a week over to volunteering over at East High School. And so my interaction with kids is what really got Judge Delick and I together. So many needs, kids that are homeless, kids that are dealing with drug-addicted parents, you name it, I've had to deal with in the public school. And so when the idea of a boarding school came up, it was a no-brainer. It was, how do we help kids that don't have the resources, that don't have a stable home environment? How do we help them and give them some advantages that they don't have at the current time? And so the boarding school just made sense to me. I had no idea. I've learned, I've been pastoring here at Rising Star, I've learned that Youngstown has somewhat of a mentality, a non-progressive mentality, as such that anything that comes new, the answer is no before they get the information. And so I just think the boarding school idea is a wonderful idea. I don't know of one boarding school that's promoted as like those who are speaking against it. This is not a prison pipeline. This is an opportunity to help kids that do not have the resources. When there is a lack of education that feeds into the prison system. So this is an answer to the prison system. And so those are my opening comments.
Thank you. Judge?
Thank you, and thank you for inviting us here. Thank you for being with us, all of you. Group when I started meeting, we said, what can we do in our positions to help our community? Each year poverty increases in Mahoning County. And I have behind me the breakdown. I don't know if it's too small for your.
We'll put it up, probably, we'll include that on the website.
We have what it is throughout the whole county, and Austintown's 13.2%, Borden at 9.2%, Campbell 30.6%.
I'm sorry, Judge, these are childhood poverty levels?
These are poverty ratings by the U.S. government. So
From
we
the
have-
Census Bureau.
Yes, correct. So we have 12.7 Trade Beach, Lowville 18%. And then you go 17.6% for Struthers. Youngstown City, of course, is our most shocking. It's 36.8. Youngstown's poverty rate is higher than the city of Cleveland. Mahoning County's poverty rate is staggering and is more than the county of Cuyahoga, which we pale in comparison. Our unemployment is high. We really said, how do we change our narrative? How do we change the narrative of Mahoning County, of the Valley? We're known as a Rust Belt. Steel mills are gone. No hope, people leaving. Parents tell me that all the time. The kids don't want to return, they want to leave. So what can we do? Especially when you see population declining and poverty numbers increasing. So we met. We read books. We read research. And the one thing that kept coming out was the best way to climb out of poverty is with an education. I think most of us know that because probably most of us in this room have an education. And you have a job. And with a job, you have a house. You can feed your family and yourself. You can buy clothes. You have stability. You have some safety. But we have so many people in poverty that don't have an education. And they don't have hopes of having an education because they can't get that stability, that safetiness of a safe home, of food and water. Because we knew we had this poverty. So we thought, what can we do? We have to help future generations. How do we do something that's going to last and have an effect? I mean, a company comes in and maybe puts a few hundred people to work. But what do you do about the children that are still left behind? And the families that are still left behind, that ever-growing number. Just 36.8 in Mahoning County for our city of Youngstown. So we said, education. As juvenile judge, I worked in creating Mahoning County High School, which is a dropout recovery school. It is not in competition with any public school in this area. It's a dropout recovery school. It was created because as juvenile judge, I saw students lose their scholarships to college because of zero tolerance. I saw students kicked out, and while they were not in school, they were getting in trouble. Had they been in school, they wouldn't have been in trouble, and they would not have been before me. So we said, we have to have a school for these students. We did the math, we found out how many students are expelled or suspended or drop out because they don't fit into school. And schools can't always address everything that our students and our families face. And so I met with all the superintendents, and they said, we will do it. And so superintendents across the county, and now I'm proud to say Tri-County, Trumbull and Columbiana, are sending students who they aren't able to educate because they're for mainstream students. They're not for students who come with them with the lives that Pastor Donaldson described. And we work with them and we help them because it's a trauma-informed school and it's restorative justice. It's been recognized by the Obama administration, the U.S. Department of Education, the U.S. Department of Justice, and statewide. And we graduate students who otherwise would have been failed without an education, 300 students. We don't have a high capacity, but we want to make sure every student has that opportunity for a high school degree. That student has to be given that opportunity for a high school degree to at least go further, get into a trade, get into college. How about get a job? So it's been successful. And then from that, we said we have to do more. We have to work on truancy because we know truancy is a lead indicator of delinquency. If you're truant, you're more likely to end up in the juvenile justice system and the adult system because you're not in school learning how to conduct yourself among peers. And people say school is about learning about the War of 1812, and I'm going to tell you that's not what it's about. It's about learning how to listen, how to respect people, how to stand, how to sit, not to cheat, to be somewhere on time, to take your responsibilities seriously, to complete your homework. That's what we learn in school. And that's why those who don't go to school become criminals, become antisocial, or worse, asocial. So we said we have to work on truancy. And this is before House Bill 140. So we created the early warning system, which again has received national recognition. We've spoken on the early warning system nationwide at national conferences. And it's modeled in many courts across this very state. It works. It's reduced truancy in the schools that participate. We have 9 public schools participating. And it reduces truancy. So we're keeping the kids out. But then we said, what about the students that are left behind, that fall between the cracks? What do we do about them? And the boarding school was the idea, because a boarding school provides that support, works with the families, provides that support, and we'll talk more about the research on those. But that's why I'm here, because in my position, I don't want students coming to juvenile court. I want them walking in the door. I want them in school, learning, and being successful. And the boarding school will help those students.
Philip, would you like to go next?
Yeah. Philip Warren, president of Bryn Mawr Block Watch. They asked me to be president of Bryn Mawr Block Watch because most of my seniors on Mahoning Avenue were dying. I saved the whole block. I didn't even know it. They told me. How did I save the block? I bought 2 houses. And I was responsible for another house to be saved next door because I found out who the owner was from out of town owner, and I talked to him, okay? And so basically what we're doing, we're trying to collectively, rebuild our area. We're not using any, grant money, any loan money from anybody. It's just a neighborhood co-op, okay? It's something that I was taught as a child to do. I'm 66 years old, okay? So there's a lot of things I've seen, okay? We all grew up poor, okay? We all was poor. Poor is a state of mind, okay? It should be only a temporary state of mind, not a permanent state of being. All these young people and so forth made that a state of being. Well, I'm poor and it's the ghetto fabrics, all this old stuff. I know what's going on. Pastor Donaldson, I did 15 years Youngstown City Schools, okay? I started, in 2000, all right? I started as, I, like you, had a cultural shock. I didn't know our school system had degenerated down to what it was. Kids cussing each other out, fighting. I didn't even know they had an SBH unit. When Jermaine Bennett hired me, I came back from Atlanta. All I wanted to do was just a little temporary job because I came back here to take care of my father, okay, before he died. I took care of him for 6 years on Mahoning Avenue, okay? That's why I saved that street. But anyway, getting back to the school system, SBH is severe behavior handicap. I said, well, how did this happen? Well, Mr. Warren, it was the drug problem. The drug problem. I said, well, who brought these drugs into our neighborhood? Well, I don't know. It wasn't black folks. I don't know who it was, okay? But it was there, and that was the issue that we had to address. Because what drugs do, it's almost like a genocidal effect, and we see the ramifications of this from since the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, all the way up to this. The guy who could explain this even better was Ron Daniels. Okay, he'll be here this Saturday for the NAAC banquet. I hope everybody comes. It's not too late. I got some tickets. But anyway, the thing what I'm just saying on this is that yes, I identify. When I agree with you, Judge, I agree with everybody on here. I'm not against your boarding house. I don't know why this came from, because people come telling me that, oh, you don't believe in Jesus and stuff. Please, I'll knock your teeth out your mouth if you ever say any stuff stupid, asinine stuff like that to me again, okay? I'm not a violent person. Don't think that I'm mean and so forth. I'm just a frustrated, tired person, okay? I feel more bad about the condition that the kids are in than you do, because I live it, okay? I know people whose kids got on drugs and so forth, okay, and couldn't take care of their kids, and their kids became wards of the state or went to Judge Dillon, and the 70-year-old grandmothers and so forth had to take care of those kids, okay? Had to take care of their great-grandkids. Mrs. James, Phil, I had to raise 3 generations of welfare babies and shit, and I worked a steel door all my life, okay? So, don't come to me in my own hood and tell me I don't know that there's a problem. Yes, I do. The problem that I had was, why do I have to hear stuff like this on the news? Okay, on the 6 o'clock news, and they call me, well, Phil, they're gonna build a board. What's going on? How come, the communication level wasn't into the people who live there? That's the question. We live there, we raised there, or feel, well, they have these problems. I said, man, everybody's too busy trying to make a living, trying to save their own families, okay? And we understand about the other families, so it's not a black problem to say that, well, we the ones who are at fault for this, okay? And we're not. We identified, we tried to help this out. I remember, well, my pastor's gone. I swear for God, I wish he was still alive. Reverend Lee, he just recently died on him. Because that's who I go to, for consultation. And he said, Reverend Lee, I said, well, Reverend Lee, what about all these people out here, the ones that don't want to do that? I said, should we help them? He said, yes. Yes. So I'm in agreement with you. Okay? I'm not against you and so forth, but we just didn't like the idea that, put in the vindicator that, the nerve of these people in Bryn Mawr, who do they think they are and so forth, with Pastor Donaldson and all these other people. You have outsiders telling us what we should do. That's the problem, okay? How do you know we couldn't work together with you as a co-op, okay, the neighborhood? And see, this is what I'm saying. This is where the problem became in, because do you know what you've done to my community, how people are all upset, okay? Especially the ones that I convinced to come over to Merida Avenue and, and live there, because we had a nice school, it was a nice, quiet neighborhood, it was safe. We had the lowest crime rate in the city, right there over in the Sharon line where we're at, okay? We didn't have all these problems and issues. And now, they're gonna build a boarding school for Phil, we don't, you know why the reason why they're upset also? Because of Pastor Bob. He came to my Bryn Mawr block watch. Phil, we're gonna, and this was a done deal before we even knew about it. I saw him breaking land out there. I said, well, somebody must be building, a home or something or whatever. I said, well, that's nice. Maybe I thought it was an apartment complex. I didn't know it was gonna be for, at-risk kids or a safe house, similar to what you're talking about, except for, well, it may not be, but,
It's not, that is not, with all them.
You didn't raise your hand.
We'll
We'll come to that.
I
We'll circle back on this.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I just want to interject one question.
Mhm.
Is there a reason why Philip Warren couldn't join the task force?
There has been no firm decision that this is going to be built on Bryn Mawr. And
Regardless, as an interested community member, I'm just curious, is there a reason he couldn't join the task force?
I don't put people on it.
Sure.
I'd have to go to the task force meeting and have everyone decide. I have to let you know.
I don't think we would be opposed to anybody that's interested in kids being on the task force. The problem has been,
Absolutely. I'm gonna come back. Poor Corinne's sitting here, and I want
We'll ask this question.
We'll ask the question later, but I just, he obviously understands a lot of what's going on, and I think
Sure.
he's a good voice.
Yeah, well, see, that's, okay, all right, okay.
Yeah. We'll come back to you, though, I
Yeah, okay,
promise.
yeah. No, I'm gonna wrap this up, okay? Because, hey, listen, like I said, I've been here for 66 years. I know you're gonna build it. It's you know what? Listen. It's a good idea. On a business standpoint, and I'm a businessman, it's very, you've got P. Ross Berry right there, okay? You made what was it, I can't even think of the word, what was it, what did you put down here? The partnership with the Young Sound City Schools back in April of 2014. I got the letter after everybody moved in. We didn't even know what was going on. And then that's when the kids started coming, roaming through our neighborhoods. Some of them stole some bikes. I have all that. We don't feel safe with that, okay? Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're gonna come back. I'm gonna get credit.
Okay, all right, okay.
We'll come back.
All right, okay.
I'm very to the point. We all can agree that the main problems that's facing Youngstown City Schools is, yes, poverty, it's crime, it's drugs, it's the unemployment issue that's going on. And in my opinion, there is no successful inner city school. Whether you're looking at Detroit, Chicago, Atlanta, they all face the same issues. And even when looking at the chart, you're comparing smaller cities to Youngstown, where the population is larger. You know, and we're looking at median income, it was like $24,000. So there's a lot of issues that our students do face, but it's some facts that just need to be brought to the table. I've been a foster parent for 5 years. I've taught in a classroom. I've been a tutor for 5 years before I taught. And I've dealt with children that, you know, from being very low income to the families that have to, you know, as people would say, the typical family, two-parent household with a median income of like $90,000. I've taught from a broad spectrum. And just because you come from a two-parent household and your family is well off doesn't mean that you're not going to be at risk.
Thank you.
It doesn't mean that you're not going to face drugs or that you're not going to get into crime. It has nothing to do with that. My issue goes all the way back to 2016, where I had a conversation with Tom Humphreys at the Chambers of Commerce, and that's the first time I ever heard of a boarding house. And everyone knows he was part of the House Bill 70 Youngstown plan. And he divulged that information to me. Now here it is 2019, I'm hearing about a boarding house, and it's Teresa Delick that's involved with the boarding house. And my issue is when we're talking about at-risk students or at-risk youth, that goes back to our Children's Service Board, and it goes back to our juvenile court. Because as a foster parent, I would see it's a revolving door. They would build a case. The families are supposed to follow a case where they have a plan for their children to be returned back to their home. And every single time they would amend that plan to make it a little bit easier for them to get their children back home, and they had never fulfilled the initial agreement. And the court has advocates that speak on the behalf of the children. Even when the children are of age, they don't come to your house and speak to the children. It's actually the caseworker that's going to the court. Yes, there's kids that, you know what, maybe they don't want to go back to that home. I agree with that. But you know what happens to us foster parents? We want to adopt those children. We don't have that option. There's a disconnect between the Children's Services Board and the juvenile court. I put it at their feet to hold parents accountable. If you lack those parenting skills, I don't have a problem with making sure you have the resources to come to par with those parenting skills. I don't have a problem with that. Even if you have to raise my taxes to keep families together, I support that. But I don't agree with the state having a mentality that we can do it better, or we should tell parents how to raise your children, because very successful people have come from the inner city. I'm one of them. I'm a person that haven't been to prison, haven't been on drugs. So you can grow up in the inner city and do great things. You can be a mentor, and you can be an example. So my thing is, let's focus on what's causing the problems in the schools or with these children. How can we address those issues? Because after they get out the boarding school, where are they going? They're going back to the same families. That's what's going to happen. I fully support a parent's right to send their kids to private school, a successful charter school, public schools. I support that. But my thing is, I question the fact that it's coming from the judge, because she has the power to separate families. I don't want any parent feeling that they are intimidated. When you talk to an attorney, you talk to lawyers, when it comes to the prosecutor and the defense attorney, most cases don't go to trial. Those are plea deals. I want to know, are these parents and these students are choosing and opting to put their kids and have them go to school, to this boarding school, by their choice, and it has nothing to do with the court. If I know for sure that these families are not on the docket or don't have a case with Children's Services, and this is what they want to do, I can support that. If the residents of Youngstown agree that we want it in the city limits, I can support that too. That's the only thing that's my issue is, one, we need to fix what's going on with the court system and children's services and work with our parents and try to focus on keeping families together and then making sure that this is actually a choice and not something that people are gonna feel intimidated.
So it sounds like, and I'm waving my pen, but it sounds
I'm
like
sorry.
no, you're doing a good job. It sounds like you're kind of coming from the point of view of checks and balances. That
Absolutely.
seems to be what's important to
Absolutely.
you. And I think everyone has put a lot on the table for a great discussion, and I thank everyone because I know everyone on both sides is kind of wanting to respond. And at this point, with that in mind, Jess and Justin are going to go through some questions, and we will try. We made notes here as you were all talking, and we know there's things people want to say, so we'll get everything on the table. And and at the end, when we wrap up, if you feel like you didn't get something on the table, you wave something at me, and we'll make sure it gets there. Okay? So Justin, you want to begin, or Jess begin?
Yeah, Jess begins.
I'll begin. Okay, so I'm first going to start with engaging the community in the process of making these decisions. I'm curious about where you are in the process of deciding a particular site, if you're considering other sites, and if it is that this is the site that you decide to identify and choose and build on, how will you engage the community in the future to alleviate some of the concerns that have come up?
I think one of the, we never decided on a location, first of all. Secondly, we don't even know if this thing will actually come to fruition. So we're still in the embryo stage. This is just a thought. We're brainstorming, trying to do research and figure out if this is even feasible. And so I don't know who shared with the media this definitive that this is going to happen, but whoever shared that information, it's false information. Secondly, I shared this before, Mr. Warren, I don't know why it's still an issue.
He was on TV.
Here's what I'm saying, listen to what I'm saying.
Go ahead.
I don't know, this is what I'm
It was
saying,
on the
I don't know why.
He said he was gonna build it.
Hold up.
Okay, go ahead. All right.
When we started talking about the boarding school, it was not at that site. I have a church on the east side. The first suggestion that I made was on Wardle Avenue, because on Wardle Avenue, there's nothing but empty land on Wardle Avenue. I'm all for it.
That's enough history.
Listen, I'm all for having it in another place. For me and those who are involved, location is not really that big of a deal. The idea is to let's get a boarding school so that we can get these kids who do not have home life resources to equip them. And so let's say we get them in a boarding school. They have health, they have educational needs, they're now better able to be productive citizens. So when Corinne, you said when they go back home, they probably won't go back home. And that's the idea, to break these cycles of poverty. That's education breaks the cycle of poverty. So a lot of what you all are talking about, I have no idea where you got these ideas or where you got this information. It's frustrating for me to hear you all explain, and what you all are suggesting was never on the table.
Well,
And by the way, let me just say this.
Oh, I'm sorry, go
Let me
ahead,
just
go
say
ahead,
this.
okay, all right, okay,
This-
yeah, go ahead.
This cannot be a personal attack on Judge Delic.
No, it's not.
No, listen to what I'm saying.
No, it's not.
Listen, and I won't let it be.
Okay,
Because
yeah, go ahead.
number one, when I got involved with Judge Delic, I'm asking Judge Delic, what can I do to help this young lady? She's 16 years old. She's been going from house to house. Now she's pregnant. She's staying with her boyfriend. Her mom, the boyfriend's mom don't want her there. And she's calling me for help. So I deal with these kids. I'm not talking about statistics. I'm talking about day-to-day dealing with these troubled kids who have nowhere to go. I deal with them every day. I'm not talking about being in school just a short period of time. I'm talking about face-to-face conversation with these kids on a day-to-day basis. And I'm talking about now. I don't know how long you were in the school system, so
She got out 3 years ago.
so what I'm saying
And
is,
change.
we could talk about we could talk about all the problems, but I'm not here for problems. There's a lot of meeting groups and people talking about the problem. I don't have time to identify the problems. The problems are obvious. Let's talk about solutions. This has nothing to do with Judge Delic and how she governs as far as her job. This has nothing to do with prison to school to prison pipeline. All of that is rhetoric that y'all heard from somewhere. This stuff is laughable. It is.
Do you wanna take a minute and?
Yeah,
and respond to that?
okay, I'm gonna just take one quick
Yeah.
minute. It's not laughable, and because I am not a fool, okay? I'm a very well-educated person. I do have a degree in and I taught, okay? The thing with it is it came on the news. They called me. I didn't even see it. Mr. Warren, they said behind P. Ross Berry, okay? P. Ross Berry on Bryn Mawr, that they wanted to build a 200-room boarding school. That was on the news. We even saw the blueprints. And so, am I this stupid, or, is there something wrong with me? Am I not watching TV right?
So are you?
Okay.
I think there's someone, I think at first leaked this to the media, which is, but none of us, I don't think, know.
Jerry Trudy told me, well, Mr. Warren, this was, they announced the plans that this was gonna be, built, okay?
So that obviously caused
Okay.
a rift between
Right.
decision makers
Right.
and the community.
And the
So
community,
where
right, okay.
exactly?
Corinne wanted
Oh,
to.
Yeah.
sorry.
The only reason why Teresa Delic's name is being brought up is because her name was in the forefront for this project.
Right.
So yes, she's a smart woman, she's a tough woman, she can defend herself, she can defend her background, and in any work that she put into that juvenile justice center, she can do that. My thing is, I have personal knowledge, I have personal experience, and a lot of things, steps 1 and step 2 have not been done, and now we're at 3. We're at the break of House Bill 70 in Youngstown City School being dismantled. And it doesn't look good to the citizens of Youngstown that now we're hearing about, now there's a boarding school. You are automatically gonna make that connection. And that's the problem.
What's step 1?
Step 1, we need to work with the children's services. There's a lot of issues with children's services, that children's service board, and they work right in connection with the juvenile justice center. We have so many students in our school district where there's issues where there's violence and they're attacking each other. The only time it's ever really taken serious at that court is if it's something where a teacher or staff is assaulted. They get little slaps on their wrists and they don't get arrested. And I went downtown, I wanted to see, I was like, okay, let's speak to the officers down here that's handling juvenile. What's going on? And you know where they pointed their finger? Back to the Juvenile Justice Center. They said they won't do anything with them. Wait a minute. I had the CEO, he went and did a tour. He said there's only 4 people in there. I said, there's 4 people. I said, you know why? They don't believe in locking anybody up. Now, you know what? No, institutionalizing everyone is not the key. Some people can get in trouble one time and learn a lesson. And some people do not learn that lesson. But it's some serious issues that have went on in our school district where we ask our officers, you know what, they have to go. And some people have been arrested, but putting an ankle bracelet on them and sending them back home to their parents, not always the solution. They're right back doing it.
I'm gonna turn it over to the judge, because you made that point a couple times, it needs to be addressed, so let's turn it over.
Okay, well, number 1, this is way off the base
Sure.
of the boarding school, number 1. And I'd like to say a few things about this. The boarding school, if legislation passes, and that's what we have to work on. It's not run by the court, it's not run by Pastor Donaldson or Ms. Fletcher. It's run by a board that's created by statute. And it's an independent board that runs it. Just like there's an independent board that runs all the school districts, including Mahoning County High School. I don't sit on that board once it gets created. We're all volunteering our time to try to find a solution. So this isn't part of the juvenile justice system. This isn't run by the court. I'm just trying to do what I can to help it, number 1. Number 2.
More on that statute, when we talked about this before, who is involved in that decision making? Who gets to choose? I remember we discussed this.
Well, we have to, right now, there have been conversations conversations with various legislators, even up to the governor's office, where we have so many other steps we have to put in place before we can even begin writing the legislation. And may I say this, what is always said on the news isn't always the entire conversation. And on that conversation, when we were being interviewed, we said, this is one site. And I also said that we don't have permission to build there right now because one, we need the current CEO's permission, which we don't have, which I hadn't even met with him at that point. And so there was nothing that was said that was where we were going to do, because I was there, Mr. Meacham was there, and Pastor Harrison was there. We said, this is one site that we're looking at, but we don't know. And that's how that happened. And are we ready? Were we ready to go public? No, we're still talking about it. This is the part that has us all sort of fuddled because we're still trying to put pieces together.
Sure.
A lot of pieces. So number one, this is not part of the justice system. This is not something that the court runs.
Can I ask you one question?
Go ahead, sir.
Where did the blueprints come from?
The blueprints were just something
From Stroh.
that they created
Yeah.
as an idea to show us.
Mhm.
And I don't think you see Mahoning County High School in these photos. All you see is a dormitory.
Mhm.
And this is a dormitory that could be put anywhere.
Mhm.
So,
It's no different than what I showed you. I have a master plan for my church.
And I have a master plan for my neighborhood.
So listen
I
to
didn't
what
get a
I'm
chance to
saying.
show you, but go
Listen
ahead,
to
go
what
ahead.
I'm saying.
Right, I got you.
They're pictures with ideas. They're just ideas right now.
Mhm.
They're not blueprints.
So regarding the facility itself, how will security be managed at the facility, and are you planning on working on a relationship with the police?
Like
Will
any- oh,
kids
sorry.
be able to come and go freely? What exactly is the plan for that? Because I know that some of the concerns of the neighborhood are that there will be increased traffic, crime, et cetera.
okay,
And this could be indicative of any neighborhood that you
Right.
It is a neighborhood.
Yeah.
Number one, when you talk about at risk, I think there's a misunderstanding as to what that word means. At risk does not mean you're juvenile court involved, does not mean you are a juvenile delinquent. At risk means you are at risk of poverty, homelessness, no food, no shelter. At risk means you don't have everything you need to not be in poverty, all right? That's what that means. People spend a lot of money to send their children to private boarding schools. There's no public ones, they're all private, and you pay anywhere from $45,000 to $35,000 in the state of Ohio. And people pay a lot of money for that. These students are students, we're saying, why can't we give the poor students and the families who can't afford to send their child to a private boarding school the opportunity to have a public one? Because these are the students that if we don't do something for them, they will be forever, most likely, in poverty. So let's do something to help the ones in poverty who don't have the $45,000 to send someone to Western Reserve Academy, which is a fine institution. So what's security? The security is going to be like any other boarding school. This is designed like a boarding school. Or just children come and go. Yes, but you know what? Lights out. Is there 24-hour, 7 adult staffing it? Yes. Or is there going to be deputies walking up and down the hallway? No, this is not a jail, it's a school. Students who will apply to come there. There will be an acceptance basis to come. This isn't something that we're going to say, you're going and you're going and you're going. Oh, by the way, you're going too. This is something parents will apply. And Ms. Fletcher is here to talk about that. We have spoken to parents who say, I wish we had this.
It's a funny thing, I'm just now hearing this for the first time. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't
That's
mean to
right.
interrupt. Okay.
That's what this is. It's a school. It's a boarding school. Students go there Monday through Friday. Parents come to the school. There's activities. There's times where they spend time with their children. And then the children go home on weekends. And all the research shows providing that foundation helps these students. They're going to feel safe when they go home at night. They're going to be fed. They'll have clean clothes. They'll have clothes. They're not going to have to worry about, am I going to be safe here tonight? And they'll be able to learn in a safe environment. Their health will be better. Now, I have stories of students whose toes have been nibbled on by mice and rats in their own home. How are they supposed to get up the next day and go to school? That's what we're trying to help. We're trying to help the person who doesn't have the financial means to help their own children And we have so many parents out there that love their children, they want to do whatever they can for their children, but they don't have $45,000. Well, we're saying, you know what, public? We owe that to our children and our parents. And that's all this is.
Can you specify a couple details about
Yes.
the facility,
No, I have to let you
ages
know.
that will?
Okay, that's hard, because you have to let you know.
Okay.
When I tell you, we're in the infancy stage,
Sure.
Mhm.
we're in the infancy stage.
I think the reason why I asked this was, I think when you and I talked about it, we thought it was 7 to 12.
It could be 7 to 12, it could be 9 to 12.
Yeah, what's
Okay.
the range?
Well,
here?
Pastor, were you able to answer that?
No.
Okay, so it's still nebulous, that's
It's
okay.
very, it's
Yeah.
very, I mean, when I tell you, we have no idea how all of us in this one public, we're like, my gosh, we don't have a lot of answers for everybody.
Yeah.
And then we hear all these accusations, we're like, we're not even there.
Well, that's kind of why we wanted to sit
And I appreciate
and
it.
talk about it as a group and
Yeah.
at least get some understanding, because I think there are reasonable people on both sides, and the idea is to see
And there have
what.
been media reports saying,
Sure.
oh, it's this age, oh, it's
Right.
this age, and I think.
And people read these reports and conclusions, I'm sorry, I cut you.
Oh, that's okay. I think.
Well, just back on, moreover, at her question, I did just want to nail one thing down. You mentioned kids being able to come and go freely. Have you decided what?
Well, number one, the only person, and the only way you can lock students is if they are in detention.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the only place.
That's what I wanted to
This is
confirm.
not a detention.
Was what was the, what are, I guess, what are the statutes? What's legal?
Well, it's called staff secure, is what the word is. It's staff secure. The door is locked, and if a student can go out, the alarm goes off. And staff is nearby and they're notified. There's not allowed to be a locked facility unless they're in detention.
Right.
That's
So
it.
it's just, you just have to know that they're
They would be
coming
staff
and going,
secure.
that they would be, okay.
Staff.
Is any of this funding taken away from the funding from Youngstown Public Schools, where the money is following the student to the boarding school, like charter school, for
It
example,
won't be a
or?
boarding school,
Right.
it's a place for them to sleep, it's a safe
Okay,
haven.
all right, and so, and they're being educated there, correct?
No,
Where is their education coming from?
we're
Their
giving it
education's
to
coming
them.
through Mahoning County High School.
Okay, so it is connected to Mahoning County.
That's what we're planning on, because that
Okay.
is a school that's been recognized by the Obama administration, U.S. Department of Education, U.S. Department of Justice, nationally recognized, because it is able to help and elevate and graduate students who fit this criteria, who just don't fit into other schools, who don't have the means. And Ms. Fletcher is here, and she'd like to have her talk about it.
Please.
Well, I guess my concern is everybody has something to say, but until you've been in my shoes and you have a child, then it changes. You being a foster mother, I respect that, but when it's yours and you don't
I
have
am a
any,
mother.
but a mother of an at-risk child?
I have an at-risk child,
I have an at-risk grandson.
Okay, so
Okay.
I don't understand the fight.
by the definition.
I don't understand the fight.
Well, I
then.
took care of it.
But
I
I,
got it.
right, but I don't
Okay.
understand the fight,
Okay, yeah.
because then you know how it is to
Right.
do everything you can for your child, and your child still is not comprehending what you're trying to teach them.
Right.
So therefore, if it wasn't for her, my son is in the military, my son is in the Air Force. My son is married, has a child and a child on the way. So if it wasn't for her and my son going to that school, my son probably still wouldn't have graduated. Howland didn't want, I lived in Howland, I ain't live in Youngstown. I lived in the suburbs. There was nothing there for him. He just was doing his own thing.
Where's the father?
The father took him to Youngstown and he
Okay.
went to her school. So we
Okay.
were working together. We were
Right, okay,
married, we
right.
got a divorce.
Right, okay.
I still raised him.
Right.
And then his father said, let me take him. He went to East, and all he did was walk the hallways. The principal suggested that he goes to Mahoning County. So I have a 32-year-old, and again, I send my kids to private school. My son was just unruly, and at that time, I've checked into boarding schools. At that time, it was $22,000 a year. We didn't have $22,000 to send my son, so we fought. Finally, I got him out of school. That was him. Then I got a 28-year-old, same thing. I got him out of school. So by the time my 20-year-old went to this, I'm thinking, you call juvenile, only way you can go to juvenile is that you committed a crime. My kids didn't commit a crime. My kids were just unruly. No matter what you said, no matter what you did, they had
They
their
put 'em
own
in
mind,
special
they had
ed.
their own way of thinking. So when my son went to her school, I was like, thank you, Jesus, now I can get the help that he needs. And he graduated, and he's in the Air Force. 2 of them are in the Air Force now. Because of my son graduating, going to this school, going to the Air Force, my 28-year-old followed behind him. So now I have my son that went to her school is an MP in the military, and my other son is an electrician. So if it wasn't for her, my son probably would just still be walking around trying to get out of school. It just would have been.
So it's a structure, and having some sort of rigidity in the.
It gave me an out. It gave me an out. Some help. We actually got some help. My son graduated. When they were in Howland, there was no place to send him in Howland. There was no place to say, well, we'll help you. We'll do this. He can go to this school. This is an alternative school. There was nothing in Howland, and we're in the suburbs. We had nothing. So when I let him go to East, and he still didn't conform to East, that's when they suggested sending him to Judge Delic's school.
So he went, so he was successful, successful at the Mahoning High School, and in what you were actually bringing to the table, you said, boy, if you had the additional structure of a dormitory-like structure
Right, exactly.
on top of the school, that would be better.
Right, well, I kind of feel like if you go into the school and you staying there, you don't have to deal with the pressures of home. Like she said, what you're gonna eat. You don't know what you're gonna go home to. You leave school, you don't know if you're going home to your parents being there, your parents not there. Did you eat? Did your siblings eat? As a kid, I don't think you should have to worry about that. You should worry about getting your education and going on to being an adult. Not worrying about, am I gonna have food in the house, or my mother or my father, I might even know who your father is. Or even being raised by your grandparents. You come home and they're here today, gone tomorrow. But if you have some stability in a school, you go into school, you go in there to stay, you can focus on what you need to focus on, being a kid.
And we appreciate you telling that story. I appreciate it.
Thanks for, I was actually gonna send this to you.
It's a lot of parents that's like that. So from what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, it wasn't an issue of poverty for you. You were in the suburbs, you had a decent school district, but it was more so that you needed the resources to help you with, being able to deal with boys as a parenting skill, and those resources wasn't available for you at the time. Is that where you were going? Okay. No, I get that. I understand that. I have an 18-year-old. I have a 14-year-old. I'm a single parent, and I know I'm a little bit tough as mom, because I was mom and dad, and all I had to do was drive by JJC with my child in the car. See, I knew that they don't take them unless they commit a felony. I knew that. But I had a child that just didn't believe grease was greasy. And so I had to get tough with her, because she was at that point where she felt like she was an adult and she wanted to do what she wanted to do. And I really wish they would have had that for you. It would have made a lot of things easier. And that's what I was asking when I brought up earlier when I was speaking. If we can get some resources for our parents, there is other routes besides the separation. Because this sounds like you didn't have a bad home. That was a good home. But sometimes you have kids that just have behavior issues. You can do all the right things. And that's where I wanted to focus on. Back to, we were talking about the Mahoning County High School, about their numbers. Those numbers still come back to us in Youngstown City Schools. Those numbers still come back to us. So we've been talking about that. We're talking about the funding. We're talking about the staff that's at the high school. And since this issue has arisen, that there could be a possible boarding school or anything like that, of us, like, maybe we need to start our own recovery, as far as graduation recovery. Maybe we need to have an administration of that ourselves. Maybe we need to focus on that. Why do we have another program that's inside of our buildings running a program? So I think there's some things that we need to do as a school district as well. I have brought up.
If you felt you had a voice in the dormitory construct, and it wasn't taking money away from Youngstown City Schools, and it was another avenue that parents could choose to, if it fit their purposes to use, what would your objection be at that point?
The only way that I would have be a part of that task force for any type of dormitory, if it was just something that was private and it was donors, and if there were inner city students that wanted to go and people provided scholarships for them to go to those schools, I would fully support that.
There's a lot of kids are kids. You don't know what's best for you. Some kids need to be sent there whether they wanna go there or not.
But isn't that letting the parents off the hook though?
No, because there's some kids that don't have parents. You
That's what
can't
you're
pick it,
getting.
no, some people don't have parents, but they rather stay in that environment because they don't know any other environment. They rather stay in the crack house with the parent because they don't know anything else. But when you tell them this is where you have to go, then they adapt to that environment. That's just like kids going to college. They don't go to college because they don't know college. They're afraid of college. But once they get there and get a taste of it, then they're glad they're there. So you can't let a kid make a decision. Just do it. You can't.
We can't make kids go to boarding schools anyway. No boarding school in America is mandated. In fact, all the ones that I've researched, the kids that are going there, they find it as a privilege to go there. So it's not a punishment, it's a privilege. And so if we stop looking at it as a punishment for kids, as opposed to what it is, it's a privilege and an opportunity to be in an environment where you don't have to worry about all the other stressors in your life. You can focus on your education.
Thank you.
I think that's where this is not a mandated, you're a bad kid, you gotta go there. No, we want this to be coveted. We want kids to want to go there. This is not just for poor kids. Boarding schools, all the boarding schools that you will ever do research on, most of the people that are going to these boarding schools are rich families that are sending their kids to these boarding schools. Why? Because the boarding school gives them an advantage. So does not the crack addicted parent want their kids to succeed? So why wouldn't a parent that is having difficulty or poor, that had an opportunity to put their kid in an environment that would give them an advantage, why would they turn that away?
Okay, yeah, you know what, I agree with you 100%. We need to change the environment. Just like the Hollywood stars, whenever they get on drugs, alcohol, and everything like that, they take them out of that environment and they send them someplace else where they're not around their same environment. And that's what we should do. Since Youngstown have all these problems here, we need to change the environment and do not build that boarding school in the city of Youngstown. Let's take it out someplace else where they're not around it. Yeah, where they're not around their environment. Wouldn't that be better? Because if you're gonna be right stuck in the middle of your area, you're not only going to be about, because what Youngstown has a 35 square mile radius, in 15 minutes you can be from point A to B anywhere from downtown Youngstown, and so it's a very close environment. So those kids will still be close by their environment. I suggest that we do take this maybe to Campfield, Boardman, Austintown, maybe Camel, Struthers, someplace else like that. Leave my east side alone. I'm gonna tell you the reason why. We already have Pastor's Ball, safe house. Those kids are walking up and down our street. We don't know where they came from. When I found out where they came from, wait a minute. I'm just giving this example. Hear me out, okay? Now, what's happening with that is, I found out, those kids come from the southern part of Ohio. So they took them out of their environment and brought them up into my environment. So
Next question, just wanted to pose it to Ms. Anderson. Just the general concept of the boarding school, the dormitory style setting, having this rigid structure. Talk a bit about whether or not you feel that's a good fit for Youngstown students, for county students in general. Do you agree with the concept behind this? This is what gives you the structure, the ability to focus simply on the education. Do you feel that would benefit Youngstown City Schools, given recent performances?
I'll give you my personal opinion. I've said it earlier, and it's not gonna change. I'm all about keeping families together. I would have never sent my kid away to a boarding school. I know people do it, but that's not something personally I would have done. Now, if you want to put the boarding school, because right now, they don't have all the plans, I understand that.
Yeah, we're not talking about this being anyone's
Right,
situation, I just want the concept in general. Let's say this could be anywhere
Right.
you wanted it to be, just the concept itself.
I do not support boarding schools at all.
Okay, what and why? Just because of the splitting up the family?
I want
Okay.
my child at home with me. You can go to school, but I want you home with me.
But what if there's no parents at home?
Hold on. We do rebuttal. Finish the thought, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
That's
What
okay.
is your question?
They keep saying to you, there's some kids that don't have families, their families are on drugs, there's no family to go to, they're homeless.
Do you understand the concept of children's services? Do you understand why?
Everybody ain't in
this-
the children's service,
let me-
everybody can't go to children's services.
Yes, you can. We have parents, I'm explaining something to you all, and I know Judge Delic would understand exactly what I'm talking about. There are some parents that know how to manipulate the system. They will pack a bag, and they will drop their kids off in the summer. They know they're gonna get a plan, they know they're gonna get their kids back. They wait to get their kids back and finish that plan after Christmas, when they end up with toys and gifts for their kids. It's a cycle. I've been doing this for some years now. So why do we keep sending these kids back to the same home? If these kids don't wanna be there, if the court said they shouldn't go back to these parents, if there's a cycle, let's stop that cycle. Not go back home on the weekend. There are people that's willing to adopt children, and they don't have to be babies. I was one of those foster parents. That's where I'm at. I'm all for supporting our parents and our kids, not separation. I kind of feel like it's kind of like that border.
Isn't fostering actually separating a kid from family though?
But they ended the institution as far as like orphanages. They feel like that it's better for you to be with a family, which is a family, rather than in an institution.
Right.
So when you end up in the juvenile court system, the parent and the child, because of neglect or abuse, where are you gonna go? The first thing that they look for is they look for a family member,
Okay.
a friend of the family. Next is a foster home with parents.
Yeah, I was just
So-
narrowing your point.
Okay.
Rather than separating.
I want to go on. Jess, do you want to ask, or can I do one more?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I just want to bring something to you. Can we just lay down, since we're talking about foster families, we're talking about where CSB intersects with this, can you explain where, we talked about the fact that the court, this is not a court program, where at all would JJC intersect with this concept? Do you know?
Which concept?
The boarding school, I'm sorry.
But the
This-
boarding school, once there's a board created, we're not involved. I'm
Right.
here to help do what I can to see if there's a need, see if it can be done, and help it get built if we need it.
We talked-
That's
we
all
also-
I'm trying to do.
Right, we also talked about families could opt into this, they would be for qualified
There's an
families.
application process. With all of these boarding schools, for example, I've said before, this is modeled after the SEED program. There's an application process, and students have to apply with the families. As Pastor Donaldson said, this is not something that anyone's mandated to do. And I have to have everyone keep in mind, when I show these poverty statistics, there's poverty throughout the whole county. Yes, it may be concentrated in Youngstown, but you have poor children in Austintown, Boardman, Campbell, Canfield, all the way down. And this is for everybody. This isn't just for Youngstown City students. And if it can only take maybe 200 females, maybe 200 males, there's going to be a competitive process to get in. And there's going to have to be parents who want to send their children there, children who want to go there. And when parents send their children there and sign up for it, they have to agree to participate. This isn't something where we take children, where we're taking children. There's going to be parents will become involved, where they have to do certain activities with their children. This is how boarding schools are designed. And boarding schools are successful because they bring families together. They help families get through the rough times maybe in this situation, because this would be free for students. We're looking, that's why we keep talking about this is for students who have poverty. They can't, you have to give them opportunities. We have to provide equity. Equity, that's the word. Right now, there's no equity. The rich afford boarding schools. The poor can't. But if we provide equity, we can take a dent out of poverty. That's all we're trying to do. No, this funding doesn't come from a school system. This funding comes from rainy day fund. This fund comes from, the governor has set aside money. We don't know where it's going to come from. But that's not my issue. That's where we work with the legislature to say, where can we find funding for this? We're talking to our US senators, talking with Senator Portman and Senator Brown, and they're trying to help us find federal funding. There's money out there for these things. You know, and you talk about where you want to put it. We've talked about going towards Columbiana because Columbiana is sending students to Mahoning County High School. So if we really want to help everybody, we have to get off one side and go somewhere where it's central. you know, so we don't know where it's going to go. I mean, when I tell you, we have a lot of unanswered questions, because we have been working on this and trying to get answers. There's a lot.
The statute is what's going to be deciding who's going to be putting this out for bid, who's going to, how the public bidding process is going to work. Do you know anything about that at this point? Explain how that's
All I
going to
can
work.
tell you is,
It should be
we're looking
minorities.
to mirror 3328, okay, because that's already passed. It failed because of a lot of different issues, okay? So what we're looking to do is 3328 set up how you do the bidding. 3328 sets up the governing board.
What happened with that?
There's lots of different stories on that. I've heard multiple stories, and I can't give you a definitive
Okay,
answer.
just curious.
I've heard not enough private funding, just differences, I don't know. You know, that was way, probably almost 10 years ago, so to try to get a real answer, I don't think I could. But all I'm saying is, the statute sets up who's on the board. I'm not on the board. I'm not allowed to be on the board like that. Period. I don't want to be on the board. All I'm trying to do is help it get going and pull out and get back to my
I guess what I was
my
trying
day
to pin
job.
down was, would this be a public bidding process?
It's a public bidding process. There's hiring processes. There's requirements as to a nurse on staff. There's requirements as to teacher qualification. There's qualifications for all this. And I'd like to address this. This has nothing to do with House Bill 70. I never knew Tom Humphreys mentioned a boarding school. Did you, Pastor Donaldson? No, we never, this has nothing to do with House Bill 70. We aren't looking to dedicate this to Youngstown City school students. We have a whole county to worry about. Our county poverty level is higher than the state of Ohio's average. We're looking to help, and as juvenile judge, I'm elected for all students, not just in a pocket. I'm looking to do this for all students and for all families. That's my goal. Period. And so this is not House Bill 70, this is nothing, that's the first time I've heard that.
Jess has one more question.
So, given the fact that there's been some miscommunication and the fact that there's been, you know, concerns that the community is not having input, how will you engage whichever community it is that you choose in making sure that there's a peaceful coexistence between the dorm and the community should this come to fruition?
Probably when we have more information. We're still looking to try to find private funders, looking to pin down more information. You know, I have to let you know, everyone on this committee has full-time jobs too. And more than that, Mr. Meacham sits on boards, you have a full-time church, and plus you have your activities that you work with at East High School.
And the room boards also.
And you're on boards also. I mean, we're trying to piece this together in our time, so I can't give you a timeline. I'm gonna tell you, we're all committed to it. We're all trying, because our hearts are here. I don't want children to move away from here. I'm tired of seeing the population decline and poverty increase. And so, again, I go back to research. Research says you climb out of poverty with an education. Everyone here probably has an education that enabled them to climb out. That's why people come to our country, to get an education. Why can't we do that for those who don't have that ability? That's all we're asking.
We're wrapping up now. Does anyone have things left on the table, left unsaid?
I'll just make my closing statement.
Absolutely.
As far as the information that came out through the media, I can only base it on what I've heard. I did hear Judge Delick speak in the media, and she defined it as a place for at-risk students. And, you know, at-risk, and then also she talked about negligent homes, she also talked about abusive homes. These are not parents that's going to participate in that boarding school.
Thank you.
That's not what's gonna happen. It hasn't happened, it's not gonna happen. So I think the narrative keeps changing of who's gonna participate, what type of families, and the criteria. That's the one thing. Secondly, there was a meeting at Reverend Donaldson's church where she stated that she had an agreement to get land from our former CEO, from the school district. And we all know, of course, if I'm saying CEO, that ties back to House Bill 70 and the destruction of Youngstown City schools because of failing grades. Not just these past 3 years, but because of the Academic Distress Commission, it's been since 2010 where we've been keeping track of that report card. So it does come back to House Bill 70. It was mentioned in Youngstown. People are making that connection. I think if it was a different situation where there was a different spokesperson that was pitching it, and if it was in a different city in the county, it wouldn't be that much of an issue. With that being said, with these families, I really would love to work with Judge Delic as far as like helping these parents, as far as keeping the kids in the home, and having her court work with our school district as it is now. Because I worked with her court before when House Bill 410 was passed, and that's when she was talking about the early warning system. And I didn't know why it was finished and why it ended. Well, when she got on the news and talked at Reverend Simon's church, that's when I find out that her and our CEO had decided that he was going to give her land rather than work with the early warning system where there were social workers that would be working with our families and going into those homes. So that's where I'm having a problem with.
Bill?
First of all, I'll just say this real quick. I am not against any children. They are my kids too, okay? All right, like I said, I worked, 15 years in Youngstown City Schools, and wasn't too much I could do. I was part of the problem because I wanted to do a plan. You know what the problem is with poverty a lot of times? You know what the problem is so forth going down? This is simple. They don't know their own history. They don't even know why they are who they are, and why they're in the condition that they're in. They really don't even understand it. They don't even know their true history. Okay? When I'm saying true history, matter of fact, I'm not even going to explain it. Okay? I think everybody knows. Why they don't want it in my neighborhood? I'm going to tell you the reason why. Okay? It's not because I don't want my own people coming in and running in and out and so forth. I'm just tired of everybody dumping everything over on our side of town, and on the Sharon line, east side, whatever you want to call it. Okay, like I said, I already told you what we had. We already got one safe house there from Pastor Bob, who pulled a fast one on us. We didn't know that the kids were going to be able to come out and walk down through the streets and so forth like that. We had that problem, and you might think that's ungodly for me to say that, but it's not. Okay, because we did have problems with some of the kids breaking in. Okay, to some of them houses. Okay, they do go down to the dollar store on the corner and steal. I already talked to the manager, Gail. She told me everything was going down. She got to call the police. One tried to cut their wrists and so forth. So this is something that the people. This is what we deserve in our neighborhood. We deserve this type of environment. Okay. Then number three, coming down. Look, Judge, as a business proposition proposal, yeah, if you can get that land free from Youngstown City Schools and not pay for it, and you can build that right behind P. Ross Berry, that is a beautiful business move, okay, to put a boarding house, and they can leave from right there, even though you're gonna do deforestation, okay, from and see, y'all know nothing about me. I am an environmentalist, okay? I love the environment. If you ever come past, I want you to come by my house one day. I want you to see what I built in the back, okay? All right? I want you to see what I'm doing for that whole neighborhood. See, these are the type of things that you don't understand. It sounds good on paper for what you want to do, okay? But the thing of it is, for what what we for my point of view in our neighborhood, we want a retirement community. We just want some peace. We don't want the traffic from a boarding school for 24 hours and so forth like that. It's bad enough I got to put up with the ones from Martin Luther King. All right. And so when you talking about this, just put it in, just take a consideration of maybe another area. Okay, that's all. That's all.
Thanks.
Pastor?
I don't know what to say other than I work with these kids every day. I spoke with the young man today. I'm afraid that I'll be burying this kid in 6 months. I deal with these kids every day. And so I don't get involved in all of the political stuff. I've been back here in Youngstown for 12 years. We have all these little groups who have stuff that they want to do, their own personal agendas. And at the end of the day, our kids are suffering. And so I get real frustrated with a whole lot of talking and not a lot of doing. This is an opportunity. This is why I'm on board for it. I suggested that we have it over in the Inaugural Park area, which is where I live.
It's about helping kids. And that's the bottom line. You know, the agendas and the House bill and, listen, I've worked with kids in every arena that you can think of. And the reality is, we're losing our kids. I've got to bury these kids. I've got to try to answer the questions that their moms and their parents are asking. You know, why did this happen to my baby? And so all of the rhetoric frustrates me. What do we do to help our kids? And this group came together in an effort to try to help. And what it's blown up to be is quite frustrating. The stuff that I see in here is disheartening. For 12 years I've been back in Youngstown, and all I've heard was, we can't do this. There are no people. There are people who just know. They don't even have the facts. And so again, Mr. Warren and Ms. Corrine Sanderson, if y'all will go back and tell the people, not what you think we heard, but what we actually said, then maybe as a community we can come together and have something good for our kids. Now, you say you're not anti. I get that. And some people don't want this type of thing in their community. I get that. But what you're talking about is not what we talk about in our meetings. And so, I don't know what else we can say. We can have meeting after meeting after meeting and say it's not that.
Then just go ahead and build it then.
Judge Leslie.
I'd like to just address a few things.
Bill.
Again, I thank you for this opportunity, and I thank the opportunity to talk with Ms. Anderson and Mr. Warren. And I hope we've cleared the air, but if anything, there's still a lot of questions out there, and we've tried to make that clear. Number one, I think the definition of at-risk needs to be defined, because what's being thrown around is wrong, and while we were here, I went on the internet. An at-risk youth is a child who is less likely to transition successfully into adulthood. Success can include academic success, job readiness, as well as the ability to be financially independent. That's at risk. It's not juvenile court involvement, it's not children's services involvement. It's exactly what I said it was, and that's the standard definition. So if we can use standard definitions as a R in our language, we can all speak the same language. That's at risk. That's the student we're talking about. At-risk students can be those who have trauma in their house, may not be. But at risk of not being able to succeed, and that's all we want to do is give them that little lift up. There are only I don't want to say, but currently there's around 300, maybe 305 students in child welfare care. That number has doubled for the first time ever, and there's no explanation why. It's not the opioid crisis. That's not, I don't oversee child welfare. We have some of those cases in juvenile court, some, not all of them, because they're governed and they're mandated what they have to do, and we're governed and mandated how we handle those cases. Number three, we are not allowed, remember this, not allowed to lock up unruly children. Lock up felonies. We're a juvenile detention alternative site. I'm chair next year of the initiative for the state of Ohio through the Andy Casey Foundation Department of Youth Services. We follow those rules that govern us. So I'm sorry we can't take everybody, but I'm not allowed to. So it's frustrating, but I'm not allowed to. I can't accept runaways. I can't accept someone because they get in a fight at school. Number two, you don't want those students around the students we have locked up, because that's only more harm to that student. Number three, I want to make sure I say we had an offer from the past CEO to build there. We had an offer, you could call it an agreement. He said, hey, you know what? You're welcome to build there. We still didn't know where we were going to build, okay? We still did not know. Because this school and this facility needs to be accessible to all the children in Mahoning County. This is not an attack on Youngstown City Schools. I've never attacked them. This is not an attack on the teachers, the administration, or the board, or the current CEO. This is an attack on poverty, one that we shall be joining in on. And I hope the people who watch this join in. I know I've been getting a lot of phone calls, emails, letters, people coming up, stopping me, saying we want to help. and that's great. But right now, we still have to figure out what we're doing. And I thank you again for this opportunity to try to clear up some of this misinformation.
Well, we thank you, and we thank you for watching. If you're tuning into Mahoning Matters, our new website, I'd like to thank Judge Teresa Delic, Pastor Ken Donaldson, Corinne Sampson, and Philip Warren. Thank you very much for taking the time and meeting with us. I don't know if we changed any minds or fostered any understanding, but I think, if nothing else, I think everyone sort of understands where people are coming from, and with that, we can probably build on that. And I think
Thank
that
you
would
very
be good.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching.